This episode of the Flow Lane podcast is brought to you by Motorola Edge 50 Neo, the perfect companion for your dynamic lifestyle. With its stunning 144Hz ultra smooth display, your streaming and scrolling feels seamless. Capture life's moment with its 50MP ultra wide camera and experience lightning fast performance, all packed in a sleek, lightweight design. Stay powered all day with the turbo power, charging that gets you back up to speed in minutes. Elevate your tech game with the Motorola Edge 50 Neo, innovation at your fingertips. Welcome to The Flow Lane with Emma Maidment, the podcast for anyone ready to create a life of alignment, freedom, and flow without burning out. I'm Emma, a wellness entrepreneur, author, renowned yoga and meditation teacher, and business coach who's passionate about helping you live fully and intentionally. Each week, we'll explore how to reconnect with your purpose, live in alignment, and build a life that feels as good as it looks. From mindset shifts and practical strategies to navigating life's challenges to building your dream freedom-based business, this podcast is your guide to finding flow in every area of life. If you're ready to let go of overwhelm and step into a life of purpose, ease, and possibility, then you are in the right lane. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Flow Lane podcast. I'm your host, Emma Maidment, and in today's episode, I'm joined by sporting legend Paul Roos. Paul is a highly regarded and respected leader who specialises in leadership, culture and behaviours. As an ex-professional AFL player and Premiership-winning AFL coach, Paul has a wealth of experience and wisdom around what it takes to get groups of people performing as a team at their best. Paul runs his own business, Performance by Design, and is a renowned corporate speaker, television host, columnist, and author. In this episode, we dive into leadership and why it's one of the biggest things holding you back from success, the mindset of an athlete, how to perform under pressure, what it takes to have a successful relationship, why teamwork as a family really does make the dream work, and so much more. Let's dive in. Hello, Paul. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. It's lovely to see you and lovely to be on.
It's so nice to chat in this way. So for everyone who doesn't know, which is probably everyone, you and I feel like we go way back. And it's probably pretty rare to say that I actually was obsessed with your wife, not you. Your beautiful wife, Tammy, was coming to my yoga classes and I was like, who is this woman? She's like this spiritual goddess. We were having all these amazing chats. Like she's on the podcast. I'll link to her episode as well. Really, really incredible woman. Got to know her really well and had honestly no idea who you were. I do not know the AFL world. It's not my kind of world. And I remember her telling me about her husband and I was like, yeah, whatever, that's cool. And then I met you came to classes. I got to know you. I'm like, yeah, this guy's really funny. Like, what a cool dude. And then it wasn't until I actually came to your house one day and I saw this big plaque up in your house that's kind of celebrating your achievements in the sporting world. And I was like, oh, like, okay, maybe he is like, maybe he's someone outside of Tammy's husband. So
well,
who are you? Who is Paul Roos? Like what, the man, the legacy, who are you?
Yeah, you're probably thinking, well, he couldn't have been a sportsman because he was so bad at yoga. So I don't know.
Couldn't tap his toes.
Yeah, it's funny because when I started, it was very much when I say a suburban league, it was, growing up in Melbourne, you wanted to be a, AFL player, but you never thought you were going to be. And you sort of lived in an area. I lived down in Donvale, not sort of, about 35 minutes before where we met in Brighton, about 40 minutes away, more eastern suburbs. So it was just everyone played footy, everyone played cricket. I played basketball and tennis. And then if you're lucky enough, you got invited down to the big league, the VFL at that stage, which was just in Victoria. So it's pretty cool. But you didn't really, it's funny, people ask me, when did you make the decision to be an AFL player? You never really do, to be honest, back then. You just get invited, you go down. No kid's going to say, no, I'm not going to go down and train for Fitzroy or Collingwood or Carlton or whoever it is. And then if you're good enough, you just you keep sort of progressing, and then eventually you play. And then if you're good enough, you play for a long period of time, and then you do all the things you do. So, I was just a kid from Donvale, grew up, in a good family, played tennis, basketball. And back in those days, like sounding like an old person like I am, Emma, I mean, your whole life was just outside. It was just sport. There was no, we had pinball machines in this game called Pong, where the paddles go up and down and the ball goes across and like that. So it wasn't like Call of Duty or anything like that. So yeah, everything was outside. So I was so excited to go to Fitzroy, but I worked as well. So I went to school and then worked. So we were sort of semi-professional. So almost like an athlete. I don't want to say, by mistake, but you just like, it's not like you say, yes, I'm going to be a footballer and, I'm going to put everything else aside and I'm just going to do that. Really, it just became something I did and then something that I was really good at and obviously became a huge part of my life.
And then you've gone on to do how many premierships?
We played. I didn't play. I played in one grand final. We lost, and then coached for the Sydney Swans for a premiership in 2005, which was quite famous because we hadn't have won for 72 years. So it's sort of this big build-up. The Swans hadn't won since 1933, and then we won it in 2005. So that was really exciting, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean that's I guess what has made you, for some people other than me, a household name that people are like, wow, look at this achievement, look what this guy's done. And I think the really thing that I've loved about knowing you now for I don't know however many years is knowing you, I guess, outside of that. Like I'm sure probably people probably meet you and there's this expectation of who you are and the story and the premierships and all the things. But I feel like, I got to know this guy that was just really funny. You've got an absolute killer sense of humor. But also one thing that I've noticed and observed within you, firstly, you've definitely got the athlete competitive spirit. Mentioning the yoga before, your beautiful wife, Tammy, she's quite the yogi. And I remember doing a private class with you guys and you basically almost pulled your hamstring trying to compete with Tammy. So that... It's like that athlete mindset, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, really, really comes through of that competitive nature of wanting to be the best at something, Is that, do you think, because, you're saying like back in the day, it's, you kind of fall into it, you're getting there based on talent. But how much at the time did you question yourself in those early days? I don't know if you remember, but was there ever this, because nowadays it feels like it's hyper competitive. Everything is so measured and the mindset aspect for kids going into that AFL world now feels like so much pressure. And you're like, yeah, I was just kind of, this guy that played footy and I showed up to training and whatever. Was mindset a big part of it back then? Like, was there that internal pressure to perform to that level?
Not until I'll touch on it in a minute, because when I started playing, I think the great thing when I was playing was just all about fun. Now, I played state basketball under 11s, 13s, 15s and 17s or something like that. But, I mean, no one really knew, like some of the kids at school. So there wasn't the external pressure really. I was a pretty good athlete at school, but we didn't really have school sport. I played all my sport outside. But I do remember going to Fitzroy, I had a good first year in under-19s, and then the second year I started in the seniors pre-season, and I finished at the end of the year in the under-19s. So I went backwards. I think that was the moment where I had to decide, because you mentioned talent. Talent only gets you so far, really. And I think talent got me to where I'd got to, and that was playing under-19s and being a really good under-19 player and playing in a grand final in the under-19s. But then there was a moment I really remember saying, I probably need to make a decision now, because everyone's talented at the Fitzroy Footy Club. They're all talented. There's 50 guys playing under-19s and there's 60 guys playing the seniors. So if I don't make a decision to be great or try and be great, it's just not going to happen. Whereas probably now kids have to make that decision sooner, which is a little bit sad, but I think they do. I think they have to make the decision sooner, because only 70 or 80 kids get drafted to the AFL, which is Australia-wide, which is, the numbers are ridiculous. So I went down to Fitzroy with 60, 50 other kids, 12 teams. That's 600 kids go down to VFL clubs back then. Now there's 80 total, 80 or 90. So you absolutely have to make the decision a lot earlier, which I think is a shame, particularly for the late developers, because even the ones that have made the decision, but, they're a bit smaller, they don't grow until they're 19 or 20, or they don't put on weight because they're smaller, they miss out, which is really bad, whereas they didn't miss out. in my era. They mightn't have got a game for the under-19s, but they scraped and then they got into the seconds, and then eventually they grew 3 inches and put on weight, and then suddenly they became superstars. You don't get that opportunity now, and you have to make the decision a bit earlier. So I probably had to make that decision at like 17, 18. Do you really want to do this? Because at the moment you're wasting your talent. But now I think it's probably earlier.
What would you have done back then if you had have made the opposite decision, do you think? Like, sounds like a sliding doors moment?
Yeah, I went and did a PE course at Footscray Institute of Technology. So I was always into sport. And so I think I would have become a PE teacher initially anyway. But because I went down to Fitzroy and it was hard to get to, it was at Footscray, I was at Donvale. I dropped out after about 3 or 4 months. And then, yeah, the rest is history because I was pretty good at football. But yeah, I started the PE course, and I think, I always enjoyed being outdoors. I love playing sport. As you said, I'm still pretty competitive, and I still love getting outside and competing as much as I can. So I always love being outside and love doing everything really.
Yeah, I've played you in basketball. It's terrifying. You don't mess with ball in the basketball arena. Particularly me, as someone who knows nothing about sport. That's a whole other story. I can do a headstand. I cannot play ball. Okay, so that's really interesting. I love that, like, there's this sliding doors moment where you have to choose, because I think that's really true for everything in life. Sometimes we get to a point where things are flowing in a certain direction, but there's this little bit of extra mental momentum that has to go behind something to make that, as a decision. So kind of going through your career, because I find this really fascinating now, like, looking back and seeing everything that you've achieved in the different areas that you've gone into. I want to just understand, like, what is it like? So you've gone from, like the smaller leagues now into being signed into those like bigger A-grade teams. You're on that football field. What does that feel like when there's so many people around you? There's so much then pressure. It goes from maybe being this kind of borderline hobby, semi-professional, to like, I've decided this is what I want to do. This is my actual job. This is my career path. How does that feel then when you're on that field and you're essentially playing the same game that you played in your backyard for fun, a few months ago, but now there's all this money and pressure and expectations associated with that? Does it shift it for you, the experience?
There's probably different stages. It's really interesting because when you first get there, and I've probably talked about my first 2 years, so you're just sort of hanging on. You just want to get on the list. The second phase is you want to get a game. So I remember my first game in 1982. So you're sort of thinking, okay, I'm now on the list. I'm now part of the squad. Wow, the coach just tapped me on the shoulder and said, you're playing. So then there's the second stage going, geez, I hope I'm good enough. And then there's sort of this third stage of which you hope to get to is I am good enough. So that takes a little while, but you can't. I guess that's where the hard work comes in, because people talk about confidence, but what is confidence? Confidence is really preparation, preparation and knowledge. I know I can play this game and I'm prepared really well, and the end result is confidence. Because if you're waiting to be confident, you can wait a long time. I'm just going to wait until I'm confident. Well, what are you going to do to be confident? So I remember both of those. I got dropped after my first game and I thought maybe I'm not good enough. I kept on training hard, had some good mentors. Then 1983, I started playing a lot better. And then probably 1984, and I've been 2 years, I belong, and that's the moment where probably the pressure goes up, but the internal noise sometimes goes down because you talk about flow. And if I think about now, like the games that I played well in were effortless, not in terms of, like you're breathing hard and, all that sort of stuff. But when I look back, you sort of think it was effortless because the preparation was so good. My confidence was so high and my knowledge was so great, and if you factor those things in, it does become effortless. You're in your flow. Now, the problem, when you hit a bit of a wall and the flow sort of stops, what do you do then? So that's another conversation that you've got to have with yourself. Okay, things aren't working. I might have to change things. I might have to talk to someone. So yeah, I mean, it's such a, when I look back, it's such a complicated journey when you're trying to be great at something.
100%. And I mean, like to be in flow state, I guess scientifically speaking, it's to master something. So you actually have the skills to a level that you're not
Yep.
thinking about how do I kick the ball? How do I, you're not playing that mental game. You're just in the flow of the moment. So what you just touched on then is actually super fascinating, right? Because you're talking about confidence and feeling like, okay, my skills are matching up with my mindset. But yeah, what happens when you lose a game or it's your fault that a play got missed or, how does that feel then in that moment? Do you have that sense of, because I observe, I guess, football and the sporting world from such a different point of view. And when I see that happen to someone, I go straight to the human element of like, gosh, what is that person going home and thinking about themselves? How does that impact their self-belief? Because you have to be, you have to own your skills in a massive way to say, I am good enough. That journey you just described then of going from like, I think I am to, I'm now seeing that I am to, I know I am, being in that knowing. And then, yeah, what happens when things don't go well and you're kind of in that reevaluation? Does it rock the confidence or is the knowing strong enough and it becomes can I just, get the skill set or the mindset or get other coaches in to help me be better? Like, did the belief ever shift?
Today's episode is brought to you by my very first book that has just launched, Find Your Flow. Are you stuck in a perpetual cycle of repeating the same patterns over and over? Do you know there's more to life than just following what you should do? Do you feel foggy in your mind, uninspired by your life? Are you sick of being in survival mode? Let go of your addiction to friction and drama with this practical personal development guide to freeing yourself from limiting beliefs. Learn how to respond to life rather than react and move from surviving to thriving with me. I am so excited to release this book baby out into the world. Find Your Flow is available for pre-order now. Head to the show notes to grab your copy.
Well, there's stages to that because it's not like you can hide it. It's not like, you've had a bad day. I hope no one saw me miss that goal, just before the end of the game and no one read the paper and no one watched all the shows and no one everyone knows. So I think there's a feeling of letting your teammates down. There's a feeling of letting the fans down, and that doesn't pass. I think you, in some ways, the acceptance of that I didn't mean to miss the goal. I didn't mean to do that. So because if you get hung up on it, which you do, but you've got to let it go relatively quickly. And that's when that confidence and preparation has to kick back in. And the great thing about football, unless it's a grand final, which we lost in 96, you can play again the next week, So you always got a chance at redemption and you have to show up. It's not like I've had a bad game and I'm not going to turn up next Saturday. I'm going to have to play again. I'm going to have to front up. It's probably more the prolonged periods when you're not playing well. My first year as captain, I remember I wasn't playing that well and a really good teammate. That's when you're relying on your teammates and friends. And he said to me, "How you going?" I said, "Oh, geez, I'm struggling." He goes, "Mate," he said, never lose confidence. You're a great player." That was really helpful to know that because, everyone has self-doubt, particularly when you're out of flow, when you're trying to get back in. So you're trying to do things physically different, mentally stay present, but you're also relying on your teammates and your friends and your mentors and then moments, moments that pick you up. We all need moments to pick us up when we're going bad, but sometimes we miss those moments because we're not present enough. So that's what I would say to people listening is if you're going through a bad trop, recognize a good moment because that could be the turning point. But if you miss it, then you're going to keep being down on yourself. That might be making one sale. That might be running into a person in a cafe that you hadn't seen for a long period of time. For me, that's, mark a goal or something like that. But think about those moments in your day that you don't want to have to look back on and go, gee, I ran into Emma. Damn, all I did was say hello and I should have. She's doing, yoga teacher and I want to get into yoga and I want to do this and I want to do that. I don't believe there's too many coincidences. I think that's been one of my philosophies. I believe things happen for a reason. And I think a lot of people go through life with the blinkers on and don't recognize opportunity when it smacks them in the face.
Absolutely. And I mean, what you've identified then is so many deep spiritual threads that come through that. And obviously, knowing your wife and how, I'll link to her, as I mentioned before, her podcast episode before, we go deeper into a lot of the practices and things that, you guys do. But it's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people that I speak to that are outside of that spiritual world wouldn't maybe have that same perspective, because it is easy to just write things off as the coincidence or whatever, but to actually see that life is happening for you, it's happening through you, you're being guided through this whole process. And if, we'll keep unraveling your career story a little bit now, but if you look at where you are at now and the impact that you're having on other people, you can see, of course, you had to kind of go through all these different things. So at what point, because from the wellness world perspective, you guys are really known for bringing meditation, these practices into the field. And I know that was when you kind of got to the coaching level, but when you were playing, did you have practices that supported your mindset? I'm sure nowadays they're maybe more aware of the mental health implications and that comes with that amount of pressure, because as you said before, it's not just letting yourself down or your team down, but you've got the nation watching on TV, and then there's media and that whole fallout that happens from something that is seemingly like a mistake. Obviously you didn't mean to miss the goal and now the whole country hates you, kind of thing. Maybe not that extreme, but was there that support, and did you start looking for that in other ways back at that point?
I think I was always fortunate to have, as I said, good mentors. We didn't sort of go to that level because we didn't have time. So bearing in mind, as I said, we trained pre-season in the morning, so 6:30 down at Kerford Road, came back to training in the afternoon at 5 o'clock. But I could see guys like Gary Wilson and Mickey Conlon, and leaving no stone unturned for their physical preparation. So I was always surrounded by not just talented people, but people would always think, well, what's, acupuncture? We did Pilates way back in the mid 80s and stuff like that. So we always had an inquisitive group. In terms of, the meditation, that probably didn't start until, some of those more high profile people, probably Deepak Chopra, those people started to get a bit of a name for themselves. And then Tammy and I did a course 20-something years ago. But I always had this philosophy that the physical side was sort of done to death. I mean, some of the training sessions we do, and then as I started to become a coach, I was fully aware that the mind was untapped. We'd probably done as much, and we're going to have to continue to explore. But I don't know that there was much more we could do with the body part of it, because, we committed so much time and effort to that, but we certainly hadn't done the same thing to the mindfulness. But I'm sure there were some of the players that I played with that I wouldn't even know that were doing it, would have been doing things like breathing, meditation, even, and as you and I know, I mean, a walk in the park can be meditative, like snow skiing, I find, really, because you're really only focusing on not hitting a tree or something like that, so there's some activities that we all do that we're really present and we're really focused and we're really clear when we do it. So I think there was an awareness, but not really a studying part of it until, when Tammy brought it in 2003 at the Sydney Swans.
It's so interesting because nowadays there's such that shift towards it. And I think what sporting clubs and what high performance, places in general have realized is those little 1% are what makes the difference. It's like you said, there's only so much weightlifting you can do to strengthen a muscle or to get faster, or, you get to that physical point where, and ultimately it's still really untapped, the human potential through the mind. And, I think it'll just keep going next level. But so let's just continue that. I just want to finish that kind of thread of going from, now playing as a team captain, the difference that comes with that. At what point did you then decide to step into that coaching role, which is essentially, a very different job and a very different, not everyone who plays football then goes and becomes, a teacher or a coach of that. It's a, I'm assuming, a very different experience. Did that feel like a calling? Because if you look back, even just for myself, looking back on this conversation, you can see all these little threads and all these, I guess, mind implants of along the way of this is where it's leading you, like even wanting to be, like a PE teacher or whatever, that teaching is, coaching and sharing. It's a different role and different space to hold for people. So what was that moment like of going from player and I guess everything that comes with that and then stepping into a whole different realm of, probably equal, if not more pressure, but in a totally different way?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt I was meant to coach. When I look back now, at the time, again, I think it gets back to that awareness. Like some of the things I did were less conscious than others. Like I sat down at the end of October 1998 when I retired and I wrote down a list of things I liked about my coaches and didn't. At that stage, I didn't really know I was going to be a coach, but it was an unbelievable document to do as a player. I went overseas, lived with Tammy's family, which we're going to do, but I took the opportunity to do some research, went to some sporting teams, came back, had an opportunity to go in the media. I worked for the Olympics 2000 C7, which was an amazing experience. And then I had the opportunity to become a full-time assistant coach. So I think at the time, I was probably more reading the signs, and the signs were telling me that this is where you need to go. The actual coaching came really abruptly because I was assistant coach and the senior coach at the time resigned, and then I got asked to do the job about 3 days later. So that part of it happened really quickly. But I think at that stage, I realised that everything before that had been set up for that moment, for that to happen. Not potentially the way it did, but the chance that I had to take, I realised that this was something I really wanted to do. And a number of other things happened for me to get the job for 3 years, and then obviously for the 8.5 years and take the Swans to a premiership. But yeah, I was reading the signs sometimes consciously and sometimes maybe unconsciously.
It's so interesting because then, seeing that full evolution, like you said, it's like, of course you were, meant to end up in that position. But in the background of all of this, you've met Tam, and then you guys have gone on to have like 2 little boys. And, as someone now that has 2 little boys of a similar kind of age gap, I remember Tammy always saying to me, like, it's very busy. Like I was full on in those early days. And, you never know until you're in it. And going from, 1 kid to 2 and then 2 little boys and the energy that brings, you're like, whew, and we're running businesses, we're doing all sorts of things in the background. You were playing at that point. Like, how was that, to go into something that's really life altering, to become a parent, and often provides a totally different perspective on life, of what's important. And then to kind of, did you feel between 2 worlds, or was it really integrated? Like, how family friendly, I guess, was the whole experience?
Yeah, it's funny. We all have this term called life balance. Sorry, work-life balance. I talk about life balance. I think if we talk about life balance rather than work-life balance, it's just way more helpful, because it wasn't like when I went to work, I didn't have a wife and 2 kids. And it wasn't like when I came home, I wasn't the coach of the Sydney Swans. And then I heard this thing recently, which I disagreed with, but to be fair to the person that said it, I don't really know the context behind it. But he said something like, "You never do anything great with if you're trying to find balance." And I completely disagree, but I don't know his definition of balance. Now, if he means, you're going to spend 12 hours and 12 hours, or 6, 6, 6 and 6, yeah, he's absolutely right, because you're never going to get, out of 24 hours, you're never going to be 12 and 12 or whatever. But I think if you have an awareness of what you are doing, and as best you can, you involve the people that you're with, then it's so much easier to do it. If you try to separate the two completely, then it's way more challenging, because you're always looking at your clock going, I have to be home, or you're always looking at your clock going, I have to be at work. But if you have some way of having life balance, then it makes it so much easier. And that's what we did. We decided to coach. The boys didn't really know what they were talking about, when I asked them. But we asked the boys, do you want, Dad's going to coach the Sydney Swans. Do you want to coach? So we had a family discussion when the boys were young. The irony of it was they were sort of, "Oh, Dad, we mightn't see you." And then when I told them that I was going to give it away, they said, "No, Dad, no, don't give it away. I don't want you to give it away," sort of thing. Because we found the balance, And I think the other thing is, when you get into positions, I think you've got to learn to say no as well. you can't say yes all the time. You have to put up boundaries and you have to do that. So but it's really interesting because people do different things. But my recommendation is don't call it work-life balance. Just call it life balance. And one week you work, you might have spent too much time at work and too much time at home. Just balance it out the next week. The next week you might spend too much time at work and not enough time. Balance it out on the weekend. But you're never going to get it, 50-50. And you shouldn't separate the two. Some things clearly you can't mix. The boys were never going to come and coach in the coach's box, which they asked me to do a couple of times. But I think if you have that perspective, it's a much more well-rounded perspective to have.
And that is actually really beautiful what you just shared there about making it a family decision, like giving children a choice, because children are seemingly so choiceless in so many aspects of their life. Like one thing we do as a family now is, and maybe not the baby, but Rivy's definitely at an age now where he is understanding it more, is we'll sit down and revisit our family values and have them as a value set of this is what we value as a family, this is what those words mean, here it is on the fridge, to just make it feel like we're creating this cohesive unit. And, if I look at your family and, even your beautiful partner, Tam, like it's rare, particularly in your industry and the scandals and the, everything that kind of goes on in that sporting world, to find someone that's, genuinely a family guy who has this beautiful family unit, and seeing that, even your son's being older now, but there's this real strong family tie that brings you guys together. Do you think it's because of that? Like the way that how did you, I guess, hold everyone together through what would have been, for what, comparing it to other people? And obviously everyone has their own circumstance, but if you look at a lot of other football families and whatnot, it doesn't fare the same way because of many things, but seemingly like there's a lot of pressure and there's media and there's all these other things that play into that. What do you think has really kept you guys a solid family unit, even now, years later?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think marry someone you like. I mean, someone asked me, I was doing this function for Swiss one day. It was mental health day or something like that, and they asked me to come along, and Tammy was in the audience. And now I'd never been asked this before, and they said, what's the secret to a good marriage? And I'm like, as a football coach, no one's ever asked me that after a game. It was funny. I said, that's the best question I've ever been asked. But I said, marry someone you like, because, you're going to marry someone you love. That's why you get married. We love them and we marry them. But marry someone you like spending time with. I think that's really critical. And because we like spending time together and we have similar, you talk about values, your personal brand as well. Who do you stand for? What does Tammy like? What do I like? And as a result, we're role models for our kids. So our kids sort of start to like the same things, and that'll be true for everyone. Your kids will gravitate to the things that you like. Do you like travel? Do you like food? Do you like, going to the beach? Do you like playing sport? Do you like doing yoga? So, we had similar values. The boys then grew up with similar values, which was really important. But I also feel like there's the Stockdale paradox, which I really like. There's a guy called Admiral Stockdale, and he spent 7 years in a POW camp in Vietnam. And what he talked about is the optimists didn't survive. And it's really interesting if you look at it. He said the optimists didn't survive. He said, look, I wasn't a pessimist and I was optimistic, but I was really aware of the brutal facts of what was going to happen. He talked about it. He said, I knew I was going to get tortured every day. I knew that I was going to not have much food. And he said, the optimist would think I'm going to be out by Saturday. I know I'm going to be out by Sunday. And he said, look, they didn't survive. And what I learned from that is there's things in everyone's job that are just reality. The reality of being in footy, there's pressure. The reality of being in football is everyone knows whether you win or lose. The reality is you're going to be criticised constantly, and you can have people tell you that you're doing a terrible job and all those sorts of things. So I think, again, that's another thing I think is really important, because sometimes, and we all want to be optimistic, but I think we also have to, if we don't take into consideration the brutal facts of the situation, then it's really difficult to find solutions or to remain calm or to control what you can control. And I think the combination of those three things were probably, what allowed us to enjoy what can be a pretty, stressful experience.
That's a really interesting perspective because, I talk a lot about you actually have to pick your hard. Like you can't bypass that side of things. How do you parent that? Like just on a side note, now having two boys, right? Because there's this thing in parenting, and I mean, you're coming from a totally different upbringing and working so hard to get to where you are. And then you have kids that are like born into, dad's this really well-known footballer, and like they've probably got their own stories and expectations and things that run along the side of that. But yeah, how do you keep that groundedness of this is the reality of the situation? Because there's from the outside seeing, dad's in the coaching box. It's this kind of, dad's this thing. People know who he is when we go down the street. Like it must be, it's probably a question for the boys, but as a parent, like how do you keep them grounded in what you were just saying then of like, this is the reality of the situation. And like, yes, you've come now into a family that has this name and this kind of, different opportunities maybe that are open, but also keeping them grounded in like, the reality is you need the strong mindset and the work ethic to get you somewhere.
Yeah, it's hard because I am who I am. So you only live your own reality. That's probably the hardest thing because, you know, I, but if you go back to your values and what you are and try and teach your kids the right and wrong. I mean, this is probably another conversation, but we're such a morally bankrupt society at the moment. Like, you know, the leadership around the world is, if you have to rate it out of 10, is a 0, 1, maybe, some of the Scandinavian countries are probably, a lot higher. But my point is that, holding yourself accountable first and foremost. It's hard to tell your kids to be polite if you're rude. It's hard to tell your kids to be honest if you're going to lie. It's hard to tell your kids to be fit if you're going to sit in the couch and, and do nothing all weekend. So I think, who you are, walking your walk is a challenge for everyone. It really is. But I think as a parent, more so than anyone, I think we have to take that responsibility really seriously. Do as I do, not as I say. Do as I do. And you would pick this up, Emma. Now it's funny when probably realise it more now with Rainer, my grandson, that I did with Dylan and Tyler. Like watching him now, he just picks up everything. Like, the words. I think his first word was aeroplane because they traveled so much. Like, what kid talks like aeroplane? Like, do you know what I mean? It probably didn't hit me as much as when I had kids. But now when I look at Rainer, I go, wow, if you're a parent, you're the role model, most particularly before they go to school, so you have to be walking your walk. You have to be doing things that you believe in order to teach them how to behave. Because let me tell you, if they're looking at Instagram and anywhere else, they're misguided because the role models that these kids have today are nothing short of disgraceful, and we only see the private jet or the good-looking girl or the good-looking guy with the girl or whatever it is. We don't know the story. When I grew up, it was see, touch, and feel. They were all, my mentors were see, touch, and feel. What do you do? Well, I do this. Okay, I saw you do that. Now, look at Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Like it's just mind-boggling to think that a guy that, and look, I don't want to disparage him because I've never met him, but it's mind-boggling to think that 73,000 people would pay money to go and watch a YouTuber fight the greatest fighter in the world at 58 years of age. But that's where we're at. So, as a parent, that's going to be a challenge. Your kid can get sucked into that world, and you're going to have to be really strong on who you are and what your values are.
That's really beautiful advice because, it is an absolute circus in the world. And I know because I play that social media game. I'm in that world and I understand it for what it is, I guess. And it's a concern as a parent because you're like, how am I going to help these kids integrate with the world? Because you can't keep them completely separate, in a bubble somewhere, but also support them. So I love that foundation of values and, obviously like knowing your family and knowing the boys, you can see that, yeah, I'm sure they've had their things that they've gone through, but there is that strong moral compass and value that they come back to that's obviously been instilled from you and Tammy, both of you, as a strong unit. I think that's the other thing I really observed in your family and the way that you guys do things in family life, but also in business, because you're now working together. Like obviously you brought Tammy into the team to share, meditation and all the things that she knows and does and has got PhDs in. Like, she's incredible as all the things that she's done and knows. So it's like ultimate power couple, the two of you coming together. But now you've got these offerings that you do together. You do a lot of speaking together in this space of, I guess you're now more known for that kind of wellness and mindset piece. And I think that comes through in, obviously the family values, but also the two of you being really united and working together in that way. What's that been like now, kind of, because when you look at footballers and the football career, it's very much like the family and the wife, yes, they're part of it, but it's the player, it's the coach, it's that person's, I guess, actual career. And yes, there's support and you work together as a unit, but you're the front face of that. What is that like now, I guess, sharing the limelight, and working together in that way that you're both kind of more public facing in that sense?
Oh, look, firstly, to bring Tammy into the club was awesome. Like, and I get so much respect for the players themselves. It's such a welcoming environment, so to bring Tammy in, which was groundbreaking in 2003, and but the players were just fantastic to embrace it, and a lot of them are still great friends to this day. So the environment that we created, which then Tammy helped create as well. So we couldn't have won the premiership without so many people and that's what you realise, including Tammy, and now to do work, we do the nurture retreats, of which you've come to, which is awesome. Tammy's fantastic at talking down and breaking down meditation as well. She's a great mentor. She's doing some one-on-one coaching now. Also, she's so wise and well connected, really spiritual, fantastic connection to, that sort of spirit world and what she does. And so it's pretty cool. Like, it's, as I said, it's good to hang out with someone you really like and work with someone you like and build something together, But I'm really proud of the club, for embracing it. I'm proud of the players, because now, it's so mainstream, and Tammy probably doesn't get the credit she deserved for implementing it, so many, nearly 20 odd years ago, where social media wasn't as big and self-promotion wasn't as big. And, I think what I realise now is, there's a lot of, as you would know, there's a lot of myths out there that don't walk their walk. They just get on and get a lot of followers and get someone to endorse them. But that's what we're faced with. That's just the reality. Whereas, I know with Tammy, she's a doer, and she's really good at what she does.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, that's a whole other conversation, but there is a lot of smoke and mirrors, and you can, like your example of the guys on the private jet with the pretty girl or whatever, it's very easy to hire a jet for a day and call in some girls, take some photos, and you actually live in an absolute shithole, you never really know. And I think that, like, for you guys, I always say to people, like, the truth always reveals itself. And I would say both you and Tammy, in what you do and what you know, it's so authentically embodied, because not only have you walked the walk and gone, built that up and that knowledge and those skill sets, whatever, you guys embody it every day, like you are out there doing your fitness and doing your meditation and having these practices that aren't just this thing you talk about in a media interview and, like, a token tick of the box. It's really, really genuinely embodied in everything you do. And now you've kind of got this, like, leadership company, whatnot, that you're speaking to in that space. And I kind of want to end there just talking a little bit about leadership, because as you identified before, I would say I couldn't even really name someone nowadays that I would look to and go, they're a great leader. I'm really enjoying their leadership style. It is everything, right? When you're a parent, you're a leader of that family unit. When you're in a team environment, a work environment, politically, like, we don't have many examples of people that are really blazing a path and leading a movement in a way that's authentic, that's embodied, that actually is for the betterment of humanity. So for the average person, my thing is, like, can we empower the individuals to be leaders in their field, in their homes, in their families, to maybe create this ripple effect of change? Like, how important for you has leadership been? Obviously receiving leadership as a player and then stepping into leadership, and now all the work that you do in that coaching space. What are kind of the underlying pillars that make a good leader, and why is that so important?
I think the first thing I'd say is forget about title, because what you're saying is right. What I loved about what you're saying, we are all leaders. I don't care. Some of the people I've met with the biggest titles are the worst leaders, and we know that. Look at the political landscape around the world. I don't really consider politicians leaders in the real sense of the word, because I'll go through what a leader is now, and then you tell me whether they tick the boxes. So the leader is about being a better husband, father, partner, wife, sister, brother, local yoga studio, the local netball court, whatever. It doesn't matter where it is. And leadership comes back to, it doesn't matter who I listen to. I'm 61 now, the 40 years in sport, and that it comes back to some really simple things, but it's challenging for people because no one teaches leadership. This is what I say. We all go through school and we get taught geography and maths and all these technical skills. We go to university, we learn technical skills. We go to work, we learn technical skills. No one is teaching leadership. So leadership is about influence. How do we influence people? Leadership is about values. What are your personal values? Leadership is about being authentic, empowering people, making people better, lifting people up, all the things that you talked about before. So again, for people listening, you can count them on one hand, good leaders. And I guarantee the ones you will think about are probably a lot that haven't got the title. Auntie Mary, Uncle Jeff, a teacher from, grade 6, my netball coach from under 13s, et cetera, because they're authentic. They embody what it is. They want me to be better. They're supporting me. They're helping me. But at the moment, what you said is right. Let's change it one person at a time. There's a really good, I love this, was it a fable, whatever they call it? The little kid talks to his granddad, goes, Granddad, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And Granddad goes, son, just be a good person. There's plenty of vacancies. And it's never been more true. If you want to be a good person, let's change it one person at a time. You're a good person. I'm a good person. We run into another good person. But it just comes down to values. But unfortunately, without getting too deep, this is the deepest conversation I go. You know that. I mean, normally I'm talking about, the dream I had last night. But, when I ate the big white marshmallow, I woke up this morning, the pillow was gone. That's normally where we go with these conversations. But, if you look at where we're at, we need people that embody, love and heartfelt leadership. The currency of the world, if you look at currency, really is money and competition. That's the way the world exists at the moment. We have to change the currency to love and happiness and support. Imagine if we change the currency, that what we value is not, making X amount and flying private jets and all that stuff that Instagram. If we change the currency, that's through really authentic and good leadership. Just be a good person and you'll be a good leader. I guarantee it. You don't have to have a title. You don't even have to be vocal. People will look at you. People will follow you. People will want to be like you. People want to listen to you. All right, one step at a time.
Yeah, and this is that idea. I mean, it's very trendy in marketing, this magnetic marketing, and everyone's trying to make the most magnetic message. And it's like, no, it's actually just in who you are. You can't fake energy. You can't lie. And I think as a parent, you really learn that because you can't lie to your kids, particularly when they're young. Like as you're observing with your grandson, they pick up everything, they see it. So you can tell them, I'm fine, but they can actually see your energy and they're like, no, you're not. You're lying to me, right? So there's this honesty within yourself. But I love that. And I love the work that you're doing in this space because as you said, like no one's teaching leadership. Like it is a skill that I think we associate with, it's because they're a CEO, they need to learn how to lead, rather than this individual empowerment of like, what would I look like as a leader in my household, in my community, and the ripple effect from that. So I love that. I love everything that you guys are doing. Obviously we could like talk for forever, but I just want to be mindful of your time. I'd love to just share, like, where are you at now? What is because if I look at your journey, it's very much a path of embodiment. You've had to walk through the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows to get to that place where you're at now to really be able to share that wisdom with people. So can you share with us, like, where are you at now? What's next? Where, I know you guys are in your Hawaii place at the moment. I know you travel a lot. You're in that grandparent era. What's coming for, the next 60 years?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you ask yourself that question because when you are in footy, it's very structured. Everything. The meeting starts at 8. It starts at 8. The next meeting starts at 10. Training starts at 1 or whatever. So it's very structured. So when you're out of that structured environment, you're continually asking yourself those questions. I think I'm just really passionate about helping people, and as you said, this leadership journey, no one really knows, how to sort of navigate it, whether that's from a parenting point of view, the local community, or when you are going up the org chart, I have so many people inquire about it. So I'm really passionate about that. I love doing that. I love helping people, putting old head on young shoulders, taking my 40 plus years of experience and saying, well, this is what I learned. Don't do this, but if you do it this way. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy traveling. It's great to, we live in Hawaii. Tammy's mum lives in Northern California. So we'll go there for Christmas. The boys are in Australia, which is 10 hours. So I go back there fairly regularly. I love my family, love spending time. They don't love me as much now, the boys, because they're getting older. So I sort of tend to annoy them a bit more now, as you can imagine. But I think they tolerate me enough that, and particularly if I'm paying for stuff, then it's a lot. I'm a lot cooler when I'm dipping my hand in my pocket and paying for lunch and dinner, and the catamaran we went round in Croatia. That's when I'm the cool dad. I used to be a cool dad when I was playing and coaching, but now it's only because I've got I can pay for some of the stuff.
As a parent, because I do wonder that when you get to that level of does it ever end?
I remember going to Aspen. It was funny, and I can't remember who it was, but some family friends were there, and they say, Rosie, if you want your kids to stay with you and a holiday with you, snow skiing is the best sport for them to learn because they'll never be able to afford to do it themselves. So they'll always have to come with you. And they were absolutely right. But I love my family, travel, leadership. They're probably the three passions that I really have now.
I love that. We're actually planning our first family ski trip now, living over in Europe. I've never really, it's not been my world. My mum's theory was why would I want to pay to be cold? Whereas Tyson, my partner's, he's worked on snowfields.
It's
he
hard
loves
to learn,
it.
but it's such a good.
I'm my kids are going to be better skiers than me. From the 2-year-old will be flying down the mountain. Mum will be.
I always say this to people: if you can teach kids, there's sports. Tennis is technical. Teach them young. Golf, so technical, and snow skiing. They're the three sports that I wish I learned. Tennis when I was about 6, not golf and not snow skiing, but watching Dylan and Tyler. If you can learn those 3 sports when you're young, you can play forever because they're such technical sports. So your kids are going to be fantastic skiers. You're going to be terrible. You're going to be slipping down the mountain and, they'll be like me. My worst, and I want to jinx you, my worst day in sport was my first day skiing. Oh my God. I nearly cried. I was just, mind you, I did borrow someone's skis, which I learned later were 210 centimeter racing skis. So that was my biggest, but I was terrible. But you'll
know it. You're no idea.
It's such a healthy sport. It's so good.
I love that. And I love being bad at something. It is really illuminating. And I love that advice with the boys because, I, as you know, am not sporty. I do not come from that. And Tice used to play, pretty professional football and that's his world. So it's really interesting to now see I'm, from that value perspective, I'm can you please get the boys into these things? Because I don't have those skills now and it's so hard to learn how to play balls. I mean, you've seen me play tennis, you've seen me do all these things. It's pretty laughable. It's really hard to learn those skills. So yeah, that's a nice piece of advice. So thank you so much for your time, for sharing all of that. You have so much wisdom. You have a book that you've written and shared all of that stuff in. I'm going to link to, all the different things that you guys have got going on in the show notes. But if someone's wanting to connect with you, where is the best place to follow along or to find you?
Probably LinkedIn. I'm actually pretty active and I like to get back to people. So often people go, gee, I didn't expect you to get back to me sort of thing. So LinkedIn's probably the best vehicle to get through to me. I'll send something back. As I said, I love helping people and that's what I'm sort of passionate about.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Paul.
All right, thanks. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll pop everything that we chatted about in the show notes below, and please take a moment to rate and review the show and go ahead and send this episode to one person that you know needs to hear this. This will help me share my message far and wide, and you can, send someone a subtle hint. I'll be back in your ears again really soon.